We have Councilmember Cox that has agreed to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and Councilmember Northrup that will lead us in a reverence.
Our Father in heaven, as we gather as a city council and as members working together for the better of our community and as citizens, we ask that thy spirit attend us in helping us keep our minds clear, to think through the processes that will be best for our area, that we'll be able to work in harmony and understand one another and be able to do what's best in the interest of our community and for the safety and protection as well. We're grateful for the area we have to live in. We're grateful for the beautiful sunsets and sunrises and the farmland which surrounds us. And we pray that thou would continue to bless us with such that farmers can continue to farm and people can still enjoy their homes. We pray for any rain to come our way and to help us through this drought, and ask for thy protection upon us as we're here this evening. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. All right, thank you. Well, if you've had a chance to review the council meeting minutes from June the 3rd, had a chance to review those. Are there any questions or amendments, corrections that need to be made for those?
I've already asked mine, so.
Okay, if they're okay, we have a motion.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Well, next on the agenda, we asked the question among the council if any of us have any conflicts of interest and disclosures that we would need to reveal those at this time. Can't imagine anyone would have on these financials, but all right. They each have a copy of the May financials. If you've had a chance to review those, have any questions about those?
You know, the only question I really had, and this is probably just something that I know that Sherry Bingham probably already talked about, because I was curious when we were looking at the financials on the 2020 tomato days. The sponsors were still paying in even though that event did not happen.
Some of them did, and I think we've kept. Teresa, you would know that. That's
Mhm. Okay. 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 Right. Just to carry over. Okay. I know that Sherry had mentioned it once, but I. Okay. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you.
we'll have. We probably ought to have that in the minutes that we got a response on that, Heather, from both. So we know that we really look to the professionals on that. Okay, at this time, if there's any citizens' comments pertaining to agenda items only, I don't know if you have any comments on the budget items or anything like that, we would invite you to come to the microphone. Okay, seeing none, we'll close citizens' comments and move right into the city business. So Nicole, the first item is we have a motion to adopt the amended fiscal year 2021 budget, and this will be done by resolution, but if you want to kind of explain this amendment to us.
So the purpose of having a budget is a control of expenditures for the city. And in order for that control to be working, council needs to be aware and make sure that all expenditures remain under that budget amount. So this is kind of truing up a little bit all of the budgets. Going forward, and I've talked to Teresa about this, but I wanted to bring it up again today, is that if there are big expenditures outside of budgeted amounts that we really shouldn't be waiting until the very end of the year, it's okay to kind of reallocate at the end of the year, but if there's going to be a big expenditure, it really should come before the council, open up the budget for public hearing and do an amendment during the year rather than waiting. Otherwise, you lose that control piece. That's what it's. But we were able to adjust a few things and record some revenues that came in higher than budgeted to cover some of those additional expenditures. And you'll see what those changes are. So the first one is in the general fund. Sales tax came in a little bit higher, so we moved that one up. The telecommunications was lower, so we dropped that one down a little bit. You can see over on the far right where that is the favorable and unfavorable change, whether we put more money into the budget or took out money. Building permits was almost double what was budgeted. Class C road funds came in a little bit higher, which it typically does. The CARES Act money was never actually officially put in the budget. It came after that initial budget was passed last year. Zoning and subdivision fees was up quite a bit. Cemetery fees were up higher. And then we adjusted the tomato days and interest, which were both highly impacted this last year. So we actually had an increase. We're increasing our revenues overall by $762,000. In expenditures, we had the CARES Act expenditures. That includes the first tranche that was paid the money came in right before the end of the year last year, out this year. Police cost was increased just a little bit. The tomato days, the expenditures came down, so we didn't need to use all of that. The reclamation overlay in roads, that was something that didn't need to be used, and so took that out of the budget. Contracted services, salaries and wages, FICA, retirement, and health insurance, that's all in relation to community development for the inspections. That's moving what was Mike Fisher's original budgeted wage, salary, healthcare, all of that, and putting it into contracted. And then the bottom one, we just need to ensure that every year one of the things for state compliance is that your fund balance has to be under 25% of your budgeted revenues. And so because the revenues are so much higher with everything else, I increased that budgeted transfer so we can make sure that enough is taken out of the fund balance and moved into capital projects to fall in that range that is allowed by the state.
So just to summarize that, the state does not want us to keep too much money in some type of.
Not in the general fund. You can only have between 5% and 25% of your total revenues at the end of the year can be sitting in your general fund. Any excess needs to be moved out something more long-term, which is why you have a capital projects fund. That's where all of the excess is held. The general fund is really just to cover operating and to cover some dips in operating before your property taxes and sales tax, and really not meant to be savings account. That's meant to flush all the money over to that other fund to the capital projects fund, where you can then decide what big that's going to go towards for the city. Right, and we talked about that at the last budget meeting, that rather than budgeting for things that aren't really going to happen, but we're earmarking them, the council can can officially earmark them or put aside assigned funds for those big projects and kind of give you an idea of what direction the city wants to go. Uh-huh. Mhm. Yeah, the money.
Reclamation overlay for, yeah.
Yeah.
That's generally what's happened is we've saved it up for 2 or 3 years and then used it.
So that's where that 600 and the transfer out to the general fund went from 400 to 650. That's where all of that excess is getting put aside. Then you can assign it out to different projects. And I don't think, do you guys have like a 10-year capital project? So that's something that maybe would be worth doing, is saying, okay, over the next 10 years, what projects do we want to do? And kind of look at what is in that capital projects budget and start assigning out things that you want to save for in 10 years, in 5 years, over the next couple of years, things like that. Absolutely. If you have money set aside, you know that it's there, apply for those matching grants a lot easier. Okay, so the next page is on the utility fund. Again, construction was big, so impact fees came in a lot higher. Garbage charges came in a little bit higher than expected. The garbage fees also came in higher, so that kind of offset down below. And then interest just tanked, and so that came down. My math, I have to apologize, that total does not include the interest. I didn't bring my formula down, so that's actually 139,000 in additional revenue, not 110. And then, so for expenditures, the stormwater, that's one that every year we've always budgeted quite a bit, but then haven't used. This year we've used more than there's been used in the past, but we didn't use the full 150. So that one we dropped that down to 100,000. Garbage fee, recycle fee, tipping fee, those all went up. The depreciation expense, I don't know why we didn't adjust that, and can look at that. But, so that's just based on the infrastructure in the city. And then the vacuum system maintenance, that hadn't been used completely, so we dropped that one down a little bit. The gravity lift station, I'm actually gonna let Teresa talk for just a second.
They're like rails, right? The new pump will be lowered on rails, so they just down instead of, right?
Right. Yep. Like the claw.
Yeah. I know, I was looking down in there and I had to.
So that's why the gravity lift station, we did have to increase that budget to cover those. So that was a last minute change that we made. And then vehicles and equipment maintenance. just didn't have the expenses in there, so I dropped that one down by 15,000. Again, my formula at the bottom, the change to and from fund balance isn't correct because my top formula was wrong, so that's actually 92,000. In the utility fund, the general fund is the only one that has that restriction of how much can be held in that fund balance. The utility fund is not the same way. And so you can leave that money, any excess money stays in that fund to be used for that fund to be those sewer expenditures that are going to be coming up. The idea being that the utility fund should be self-sustaining, that the income that comes in from that should be able to cover all of those expenses. And so building up that fund as you have these years that don't take all of those expenditures, a good thing. And then down in the capital projects fund, there was a few changes there as well. Again, impact fees went up. The grant funds, that's for that transportation grant to do the study, was 54,000, so we included that in the budget. The ramp grants, we didn't get as many in this year, so that went down to 10,000. 4,700 west, there was more that came in, as well as the 5,500 south sidewalk. And then interest went down, and then I reflect the increase in the capital, in the transfer to capital projects went from 400 to that 650 that we talked about already. So overall, increasing that capital projects fund by 546,000. In the expenditures, the parks and trails was just a little bit over, and so we just bumped that one up a little bit. Cemetery improvement, we didn't have near what was had initially budgeted. And then the shed project was a new project that that got added in after the fact. 4,700 West had additional expenditures. They also had additional revenue, so those typically offset. Once we get the audit done and everything like that, those tend to be pretty close to the same. And then the transportation master plan, I just put in the expenditure to match the grant, but I don't think that that's all going to be expended. Part of it's going to be into next year. And then the infrastructure upgrade was a little bit more than what had been initially budgeted, as well as the 5,500 south sidewalk. So the total going into the capital projects fund is just over 546,000. Everything else balance out. Are there any questions there? Good.
Good.
Okay, that's the amended budget then. So
Normally resolution and made a motion by resolution, or should we do all of them? Or should we do them as we,
whatever
like
you
right
wanna
now?
do.
Maybe we could do that per line item. That, I think that would be a little more clear,
Since they're
right?
separate on the agenda, that's probably,
So this would be item A under city business. And Reed has already written up the resolutions. So part of the motion, resolution. But we do have a copy here. I don't know that they have a copy. No, I don't.
is that one?
Where this is in a he call for a roll count on there where it's a resolution. Okay, we have a motion to adopt. Have a motion. So done by roll call. Council. Oh, I was just going to start at that end. Councilmember Paulson. Northrop.
Yes.
Yays. All were yays. Okay. Line item. Rescue.
So we don't know exactly how much it's yet. We have an idea. It has not come in yet. So that would definitely be something that once that money comes in, the council should plan to amend the budget, show that as revenue and decide how that's going to be expended.
What? I didn't hear that.
So we talked about the first tranche,
Right.
the first tranche that came in, we said we'd send to the county so the county can reallocate it. We approved that as a council. But then there was more monies that came in from that act. And when those monies came in, we said we wanted to address it and we didn't address it. Whoever made decisions and just kind of went forward with it. So we just want to make sure that we're following the process where the council's making sure that, I think that's what Councilman was saying is we want to make sure we're aware of when that money.
Of where that money went.
And how it's allocated.
Yeah, they did, there was a list of like anyone that applied in the city that businesses, and they also listed where the money was paid out. The county actually had a list of where the money was spent, but it went to other cities. Didn't, they just put it all together and some came back to Hooper, if people applied for it, to help with their business. But other than that, it just went to other areas in the county. The county,
Yeah, I feel like that was probably on our part, that was a fail on our part. Yeah, because I don't think the county could put it back into our city. We had two members right here that applied for it that had businesses and neither one of them had access to it.
Got an email like less than a week after it went out, so it was gone. Don't bother. That's what the email I got. I said, don't bother, right? 1 week. And what we have, 300,000 that went there from our little city. I can only imagine how much money the county had to spend. It was gone.
well,
You can use it for infrastructure.
and we have a few years. See, before there was such a deadline. Yeah.
And it was a lot more restricted on what it could be spent on. So yeah, I would recommend that once that money does come in, that put it on a council agenda for for a public hearing, and amend the budget to have that money come in. And it should be, it was supposed to come to the state within 60 days of passing, so that would have been May 10th, around May 10th, I believe. And then the state has 45 days, so I think it's supposed to be around the first week of July.
All we know,
But I haven't heard about it from anyone else.
all we know is we did get a bill for $1,000 if we want someone to administer that funding in this. Yeah. Well, right. That's just what she said. That's a direct quote on her quote.
So do we have a ballpark on what it's going to be?
Not for both or for one?
And we have 2 years to spend
So
it.
the first tranche is now, so it'll be 500,000-ish now. You have 4 years. 24, 2026. And then spent by 2026. And then the second tranche will be approximately a year from. But yeah, you can use it on for infrastructure, telecom infrastructure. And, right, but sewer definitely you could invest in critical infrastructures is what it's designed for. Yep, yeah, it probably, yeah. Okay. All right, so for the current year budget, we kind of went through line items at the work session. So I was just kind of gonna go real quick through it unless there are specific questions, feel free to stop me. For property taxes total, we're budgeting, the far right column is that budgeted amount. We're budgeting 1.839 million. Total licenses, we're budgeting 252. The biggest drop from this year is building permits. We don't want to count on that, so that's what dropped it back down. Intergovernmental, this is Class C roads, liquor funds. This is where that additional money will get counted once it comes in. Budgeted at 471,000. Charges for services, we're at 221. Again, there's some additional construction that happened this year, so we quite go up as high as it was for 2021. Interest, budgeted 32,000. And with no transfers in from other funds. General government, total budget for that one is 430,000. If you look, our original budget was 415. Our current year actual, very top of page 3 is where I'm at. Current year actual is 1 million, but that's due to the CARES Act expenditures. Moving down on page 3, public safety, budgeting 621,000. Recreation, we've got the tomato days back up to its normal amount, so we're at 120,000, just under 120,000. Highways at 729,000. This year we only spent 308, but a lot of that just getting put for reserves for Class C roads and things like that. Parks total is 465,000, slightly higher than this year's budget, but quite a bit higher than what we've actually spent. So we've got room in there for things that need taken care of. Community development, we had adjusted and reallocated that to be more reflective of where we're at now, including an additional hire, for a total of 166,000. And then with all of those expenditures, we actually are showing about $1,800 in excess to go back. The fairly balanced budget, with $400,000 being transferred out to the general or to the capital project.
That's really close to what we reviewed in
Yeah,
very same.
yep. We haven't changed anything. And then I don't think there's been any changes in general or in the capital projects fund. So I can go through the other funds are a little bit smaller. Are there any questions on the utility fund? Concerns? Okay. So that one, we have a total revenue of 2.2 million with total expenditures of 2.2 million. And keep that one pretty even keel. And then the final is the capital projects. Again, this hasn't changed at all. We have total revenue of 2.5 million coming in. That's from grants, transfers, impact fees, and then we have expenditure total of 2.5 million as well. So if there are no questions that I can answer, then that is the budget for next year.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Motion, make a motion to approve. Yes.
Yes. Okay, we'll now open this up for public hearing. If invite you to come up. Okay, seeing none, we will close the public back to council.
So I'll make a motion to adopt the final fiscal year 2021-2022 budget resolution 2021-4 for approval.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. Resolution 2021 dash. Okay, we'll just start. Someone-
Yay.
Yes.
Council. Okay, so we have some yays and yeses, but they're all. Okay, so that resolution passes. Okay, line item C.
So the certified tax rate, one of the revenue items is property taxes. And the certified tax rate that the county has given is 0.000353. And so, yeah, you need to approve that certified tax rate, or if that's for a revenue of $238,990. Teresa was asking me, why do we have to, this county just gives it to us. But you do have, this is an opportunity that if you don't feel like that's, that if you need more than that, or if you need to raise the property tax rate, that this would be the opportunity that you would do that. So,
Is that higher or lower than last year?
it is, the rate itself is lower. The dollar amount is higher, because what they do is they take into account the values of homes have gone up. And so they increase the values of homes and then reallocate the percentage across. So the percentage goes down, but then all of the new homes that are built then get outed back into the equation. And so it actually gives you a slightly higher dollar amount.
When you say slightly, what?
Last year was 224, I think, 124,000. And this year it's 200 or 200, or no, it was 200 and, looked it upside down. Last year was 227,000, this year's 238. But your total budget is such a small percentage of county property tax. At least as far as my recollection.
That goes up no matter what.
But
Well,
I believe this
we
one,
could-
this one you do have to open for public hearing as well.
So we could raise.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, we will open line item C for public hearing. Might like have a comment, microphone. Okay, seeing none, we will close the public council.
I'll make a motion that we approve the county recommended certified tax rate of 0.000353 for FY 2021-2022 as resolution 2021-05.
Have a motion and a second. Have a. Councilman Osler. Councilman Hill.
Yay.
Cox. Okay, so that was unanimous. Okay. Line item D, this, Nicole, you're going to take care of this
Yes,
too?
I'm doing this
I mean, this
too.
puts a big smile on your face, right?
I live.
Okay.
So this is the fraud risk assessment. This was a new auditor's office last year. So this is our second year doing it. It has to be passed before the end of the fiscal year every year and then uploaded to the site, just like the audit report, the financial statements, the impact report, like that. Right now, it has no other purpose other than to have everyone in the council be aware of the status. There's no penalty, there's no gold star. It's just, yeah, but they don't give us a gold star. It's just, and as the auditors, all they have to ensure is that it was filled out, it was discussed, and it was submitted to the state. That's all that it is right now. Where this is only the second year, I would imagine going forward in the future, it is going to be looked at a little bit differently as they decide, as they start to come in. But at this point, it's simply just a self-assessment. Have this on front and back.
Well, that's what I was wondering. This
Yes.
Total
this
points
is-
earned, is that 395 what we actually earned?
Yes. Teresa,
Well, she got her CPA last
that gave you an extra 10 points.
year. We gave her like graduating.
So yeah, so all of these are things that they've had issues with other cities, and they've kind of narrowed it down to these are things that really need to be in place in order to lower the risk of fraud or of even mistakes in an entity to as low as it can be reasonably. So the first one is, do they have a basic separation of duties? You have enough people doing things that you do have a basic separation. In instances where there isn't, there's always there's a column that says MC. You can see on line 2 and 3, that's what we've got marked, and that's a mitigating control. So it means that it's really not as separated as it should be, but there's another process that we've put in there to ensure that there is. And so for instance, the receiving cash and check payments, Teresa does that. She also enters them into the general ledger, and then I review them. So even though she's the same person doing it, I'm reviewing that work, and so that keeps that control in place. And you have to have all of these in order to get the full points. If even one of these is missing, then you get 0 on that one, because these are critical for the financials of the city. The next section is all written policies, which Shauna implemented last year and made sure all of those policies were in the handbook. And so you were able to get full points there. Having a licensed CPA as part of the management team is on there, as well as having a member that also has a bachelor's degree in accounting, which Teresa fulfills that role as well. Yeah. Committing to ethical behavior, and that's an annual statement that has to be signed. And then number 5, that everyone does their online training, which is part of the audit anyway, but they've included it in here so that you all are staying up on what the rules and requirements are. Number 7 is that there's a fraud hotline, and I believe it's our office. Yeah, so it's on the website, that if a citizen has a concern, they can call, and it goes to our front desk and give any responses. And we serve as the fraud hotline for several entities. And so it's just as a separated third party, if someone has an issue or about how things are happening, contact our office. And then number 8, does the entity have a formal internal audit function as a council? Or no, that's the audit committee. So the formal internal audit function is what I do, where I come in and I look at the bank statements, I review all of the accounts payable, all of the checks that are going out. I check to ensure that the checks were all signed appropriately. And then I also review any adjustments that are made to the billing account. And then the last one is a formal audit committee. And that's, the council is, so serves as that formal audit. committee. So yes, you got full points this year. Are there any questions?
Do you ever see one where it's in the high risk or
Yes.
high category, like cities do fail?
Yes, and the biggest thing is if, I mean, there's a lot of cities that don't have an outside accountant, and so it's usually a cost thing, and so they do what they can. But there are some, and if they have any of these, I think going into the second year, if anything, it made them really aware. So I think the first year there was probably lots that were under that, that were in that high, possibly very high range where they just weren't aware that this was really an issue. And they just took the findings as auditors found them.
Well, thank you and good job.
Okay.
Really appreciate that report, that review. Teresa, did you have any more, or is that got everything about covered? Is that right? Okay, all right. Have a second?
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
I,
Opposed? Okay, seeing that that's the last item of city business, we'll again open it up to citizens' comments. Have you limit your comments to 3 minutes and invite you to come to the microphone if you have any. Okay. No, in fact, a lot of that is just water that's available. Law that requires so much. Our concern, like in an area like, if they're releasing Dad's mentioned that. It is being out, catching it out at Willard Bay. It's not being wasted. Really expensive water. Okay, is there any other comments from council or? Well, but problem is that's it's like something. Does, yeah, we water the arena 100%. with secondary water. So it has affected that, and so, well, no, what Jared was working on that to make arrangements. And we have the truck, again, so made arrangements. There's one group that's coming in with a truck, in the, so I don't think it's going to be good as what we can, but I think everybody's idea of it starting to realize not a management type decision. Okay. You know,
Yeah, I told someone last night, I said, they were out watering with the hose, and I said, that's great, but it's gonna be dead in a couple of weeks, like you're prolonging it, just really wasting it, so.
there's just some things they didn't anticipate. One, they didn't anticipate having these types of, I think it was unprecedented since having this high, and not only having high calculation on the amount of water that went into the ground from the snowpack. Thought 50% of that water thought that was a high estimate. Now that they're actually measuring the water, 83, 17. Things are best. But it's worse than. Yes, we just need to how we're going to weather this. Have had. So it's kind of an interesting happen. Heather actually that if offer that. Thanks. Yes. As long as
I'll second. Aye.
are adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah, my grandson playing out there and they canceled all these games.